Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for February 14th, 2023. Happy Valentine's Day to those who celebrate.
Oh, happy Valentine's Day.
I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gail Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life you want to be living. We explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep.
If you're new to our Zoom meeting, we want to let you know that you can share your comments and questions via the chat feature, and I'll try to make sure Gail addresses them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature to let us know if you'd like to make a question, ask a question, or make a comment yourself via audio or video. We're also streaming the webcast live on Facebook, so you can give us your questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gail. We're going to start by recapping last week's weekly tittle, which was called Eat It or Street It.
Another good one.
The assignment was to free up, you're going to love today's. The assignment was to free up space in your food storage areas by culling items that no longer meet the criteria to stay there. Let's hear from our participants in Zoom and on Facebook. Who downsized their collection of antique food this week? Please let us know in the comments. Several people responded favorably to this one. YouTube viewer Wanda Yonder 9772 found motivation in last week's tittle. Wanda wrote, "This is a tittle I can get into. I have very limited kitchen food storage and can see some mysterious items way over in the back that probably need tossing, using, or recontainering into something smaller placed at the front to use up. Thanks for the nudge to pull it all out, have a look, and wipe the shelves off before putting the good stuff back in."
Go for it, Wanda. The good thing about clearing out the fridge is it's technically a medium-sized box. It can hold a lot, but it's not an endless collection. So you can spend a half an hour on one shelf, or you can spend 3 hours for a major overhaul of the fridge and freezer, whatever you're up for doing. Ed, talk a little bit about how your freezer cleanup project went this week. I know that you did that. What did you do and how much time did it take?
Not the freezer, the fridge.
No, right? Okay.
It took a spectacular amount of time. We had made plans to have people over for dinner on Saturday, and so before going shopping, I got in there to make some room in the fridge, and we had a spill in there a while ago that didn't get completely cleaned up, and we also had just the stuff that accumulates over time, the jars, little jars and bottles, and things that get opened and half eaten and then make their way to the back. And we have the problem of having a huge refrigerator, which, you know, it's a good thing in a lot of ways, but it also means it's really easy to lose things in the back. So,
right. I bet you found some surprising leftovers back there.
Yeah. I pulled it all out, shelf or drawer or cubby at a time, and clean the spaces, assess the bottles and cans and jars, and got rid of, oh, I don't know, I must have put easily 60 or 70 items into recycling after rinsing.
Ooh, good for you. That's a lot.
We had one favorite salad dressing, of which there were 3 open bottles. One of them was nearly full, so it had just been opened, but there were also, you know, little dribs and drabs in 2 others.
Oh, how funny. It sounds like you were overdue, actually.
Yeah, it was. We definitely were. M asked, what I don't understand is the spills that don't seem to have a source. Where did the drips and crumbs come from? What a mess. It's true. Right? It's like refrigerators manufacture their own mess. It's bizarre. So that project probably took me about 3 hours, because I did a lot of cleaning, as well as I did more than the tittle. I did the purge. I also did way more than the 5 items of the tittle, obviously.
Right. And it sounds like it was overstuffed and you were overdue.
Yeah, and it creates so many, having too much in there creates so many problems, because you can't see anything. You have to push things aside to even get at the stuff that you know is in there.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been doing a pretty good job lately about cooking at home instead of eating out or ordering in. And
Right.
and so I think it's gonna be a real boost to that, to our ability to prepare food, to entertain,
Yeah, to
to
cook at home.
to find something when you're in a hurry, when you're ready to eat and you just want to find something that's already ready, or it
Right.
just
That
needs to
isn't
be
hard.
tossed in the microwave. Yeah.
Good job. Let me just say, yay,
Thank you.
Ed, for working so hard on your fridge. That's excellent. And 3 hours is like the major overhaul timeline, right? Like
Right,
that's what
right,
you did because you pulled it was very full and it's a big fridge and you pulled everything out and you cleaned everything. And so it doesn't have to take 3 hours. You could have done one shelf and you had a goal and people coming and shopping and so you did it all in one go, but
right.
somebody else could come to it and do one shelf this day and the second shelf the next day and the third shelf another day. And you can sort of work your way through it slower than that if you don't have the stamina to spend 3 hours. So
Yeah, and I would definitely, that's how I would suggest attempting it to anyone else is pick,
right.
clear off the top shelf, get it clean, put back only what needs to go back, and actually you could maybe even put back only the best stuff on your newly clean shelf and tuck
Yeah.
anything else you're keeping somewhere else so you can keep some clean space to work with as the refrigerator goes on about its life.
Yeah. You do the project.
Move more things as you handle them.
Yeah. 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 Good job.
M said, my items didn't meet the qualifications of being called food anymore. I need a compost heap.
You actually had started the compost heap inside the fridge and you just needed to relocate it. Good
Yes,
job.
exactly. Tammy said, I threw out old food with emotional connection, expired, rotten. I need to find other ways to fill emotional needs. That is that's a big problem for a lot of us, that our food has a strong emotional component for us. So,
well, and eating is a way that we manage emotions too.
yeah. And it even comes into play as you're shopping, the thing you see things, and just seeing them brings you a sense of comfort and you want to bring them all home with you.
Yes, you do. It's true. Oh, well, thanks for doing that. I appreciate that everybody worked on the Tittle last week. It was an attainable one. It was a good one. It was a practical one. I hope everybody got something out of it.
One more comment and then we'll move on. Anya said, Sunday, someone finally bought and picked up my big food processor. Woohoo, 150 euros for me.
Oh, way! Anya got paid. That's awesome. And I'm sure that was a huge footprint that is now no longer in your kitchen. So go take a picture of the clear space that it made so you can remember what it looks like. That's awesome.
Okay, I lied. Here's one more good one, because
okay.
This is not another story of food getting thrown away. Paula said, I used a bunch of frozen tomatoes from the garden in soup this week. They're great to have, but take up so much space. Now it's not so crowded in the freezer.
Excellent. And you got the benefit of eating the lovely tomatoes that you froze. And so how fabulous. I'm sure it was quite tasty. Yum.
M also said, you inspire me, Ed. I will schedule 3 hours and see if I can get it done quicker. Go for it.
Oh, right. Try to beat Ed's time. The challenge is off. The challenge is made. Go team, go.
Excellent. Okay, let's get on to our main topics. We're going to try to cover 3 today if we can get through it all. First one is, you've made up your mind to get rid of something, but your heart hasn't caught up with your head. We're going to talk about what to do about stuff when breaking up is hard to do. Go ahead.
Okay, Go ahead. All right. So the title of this segment comes to us from the Neil Sedaka song By Way of Christine, who wrote this in response to one of our recent surveys. Like the song says, breaking up is hard to do. Breaking up. Some things have been so hard to part with emotionally, and it's helped to move items out of the house and into the basement or the garage. So at least I can get used to them almost being gone. Then when they go, it's not as bad, because there must be some other strategies, to having to lose something somewhat easier. So Christine is talking about her process. And before we talk about her comment, let's look at the survey results. We asked our audience to describe an item or a collection in your space that you're rationally prepared to let go of, but you keep because there's an emotional connection or a nagging feeling about it that you haven't resolved yet. And here are a few of the responses. Deborah wrote, I have a small spiralizer, the thing you take to make vegetables and make them into noodles. I've never used it. I think about the salads and the dishes I could use it for. I think of the host or the cook that I could be. I often host and have yet to use it. It was a gift. So this spiralizer is an example of aspirational clutter, something that's hard to let go of because we associate it with a positive future version of ourselves that we've imagined that we could be. And sometimes we just have to admit, if that future version of ourselves ever actually becomes a priority, we can get a new spiralizer. But in the meantime, we probably can let that one go. Either make use of it and make using it a priority for you now, or let it go out. She's also talking about gift clutter, an item that we're reluctant to release because it represents another person's kindness, generosity, thoughtfulness, or it just conjures the memory of that person for us. And sometimes the fact that it's gift clutter makes it a barrier to let go of. And this is where the Clutter Fairy always says, they gave it to you, now it's yours. Now you own it, and you can determine its fate. So the object can be released if it's something that you got from them, but you don't particularly want to use. You can be grateful to them for the gift. You can thank them in your head again for the gift if it helps. You can mention it to them and tell them thank you again if that helps. And you can still make a choice that that object can go on to live somewhere else. Just because somebody gave it to you doesn't mean it's a good enough reason for it to stay in the house, right? Okay. Paula said in response to this, I'm ready to let go of the flags that were on my parents' coffins for their funeral. Both of them were in the Navy. So I no longer want them, but I can't give them to siblings, as we all receive flags. I'm sure they gave them to the whole family, right? Can't ship them off to thrift stores, so they sit here taking up space. I thought about this one for a minute and thought that you might want to give them to a funeral home to use again, or to the local VFW hall as a donation. I'm guessing that you had to pay for the flags as part of the funeral. So if you offer them to a local funeral home or cemetery, they might be able to then gift them to someone who can't afford a flag. And that would be a kindness on your part to pass them along to somebody else that can't afford it. VFW halls, other veterans gathering spaces might also take the flags for use for something. So you just need to look a little bit, instead of the idea of a generic thrift store, you need to look for something that's more military related that might then have an avenue to take the flags. Amelia reports being unable to get rid of an Afghan that her mother knitted because her mother knitted it. She says it's never been used, but the color and pattern don't go with anything else in the house. Heard this one before, but my mother made that. Well, I understand. So artifacts and the relics of our parents' lives really create some of the strongest emotional attachments to break. Perhaps Amelia can reflect on the friends or family members who might appreciate the design and colors of the Afghan and be happy to make a home for it. It's okay that the color and the pattern don't work for you. And I remind Amelia that I'm sure she has other things that her mother knitted around the house that she is keeping, that she is using, or other things that she created as a craft that have her mother's handiwork on them. And so letting go of this one thing that her mother made doesn't negate all the other things that she made and Amelia is keeping. And so ask the other family members if they have an interest, if they like the color design, and ask some friends and see if somebody wants to have the Afghan. And if not, then you can say, I can donate out this Afghan and let someone get use out of it. And I may not know who that person is, but I can let it go forward and trust that Mother's knitted blanket is going to go make somebody else warm. Donate it to a homeless person if you want to. If you're in someplace cold, I'm sure they would love to have your Afghan. Just a thought that you can remember that you have other things that she's made, the other handmade things that you of hers. And this one doesn't have to be the one that stays with you if it's not something that it's not a color pattern that you really like. Okay, so now let's get back to Christine and talk about the strategies for easing ourselves out of emotional attachments to the stuff that we're mostly ready to release. Christine, you might start by using a technique we've talked about before called reframing. This really means making a shift in the way you talk about and think about the issue. You used the phrase earlier, having to lose something, you're having to lose something. So instead of thinking of letting go of the items you're ready to declutter as losing something, you might try to think of it as giving someone else the opportunity to find that thing and make it a useful part of their life. So instead of focusing on you're letting it go, you can focus on you're creating an opportunity for someone else to find it and use it. You can also reframe it this way. Think of the item as having lived its useful life with you, and now you need to pass its remaining useful life on to someone else. So you inherited grandma's dining table. There's so many memories of the table, but you can't actually use it in your house. It's too big, it's too small, it's the wrong color, it's the wrong shape, whatever. For whatever reason, grandma's dining table that you remember for 50 years being in her house doesn't work in your house. So then you can just think of it as having served its term with your family, and it's time to move on to the next family to make memories with, and let someone else create and have it be a part of their life history next. And you got your 50 years or 60 years or 20 years or whatever out of it. And that table is part of those memories of your family. The proximity method that Christine mentioned works well to break the spell of something that's always been there in the same place forever. It usually seems anchored there when it hasn't been moved in a long time. Just pulling it out of the place and moving it to the garage or the basement helps loosen its grip on your space. Letting it rest in the garage on the way out the door lets you get used to its absence from your house. And after you live with it removed for a while, it should be easier to release it finally. So take a photo of it either in place or after you pull it out on the way to its resting part, to the garage or the basement. So you'll always be able to look at the picture. And if you have a very strong emotional attachment to an item, but you're truly out of space and are hoping to release it, it's time to imagine it as if it was at a garage sale. Imagine going to an estate sale and seeing a similar item on display. What would you pay for this item at someone else's sale? Would it just be a cute collectible there? Remind yourself what you would feel about this item without the attached memories. Then remember that the attached memories will be there even if the item isn't there. You can return the item to a non-attached state in your mind and separate the memories of the item from the item itself. Take pictures, write down notes, anything about the memories as a way to keep the memories without keeping the item itself. It's just a way to think about, to everyone else, this item is just a picture. It's just a ceramic vase. It's just a stuffed pillow. It's just an Afghan. It's not the special Afghan. And so you can work on capturing the memories and recognizing that the memories are separate from the object, and go about trying to separate them so that you can release the item that no longer works for you. Now, we're not telling you to get rid of everything that you find valuable and important. The premise of this discussion is that you have it, it has emotional attachment, but you don't actually need it or want to use it.
And then
And so
and that at some level you've accepted that this
it's
thing
not going to work for you.
doesn't need to be in your space.
Exactly. Okay. That's that topic for today.
Let me share a few comments.
Okay.
Ginger said, I realize some things stay in our home just because they've been there for years.
Yes.
Like the raggedy quilt on our bed.
Yes.
Hubs bought it 35 years ago from a lady in a neighborhood he patrolled as a police officer. It's worn out now. The threads of patches are coming loose. I think we need a new quilt.
I think you're right. And I think that quilt sounds like a perfect donation to an animal shelter that needs that kind of stuff for the animals to use. The animals don't care that it's threadbare. They will be perfectly happy to lay down in it either way. So it's time for it to go on to its next life and its next point of service. And you need a new comforter. Sounds like to me.
It does sound that way. Naomi shared, I have just decided to give away half of my mother-in-law's Wedgwood china set. A friend needs some, and I will never have a dinner party for 12 anymore. My hearing isn't good enough for large gatherings, so keeping 6 of each will be just as useful to me as 12.
There you go. And that's something that I don't think people consider. Like they have this china collection that has place settings for 8 or 10 or 12 or 16 or 20, and they inherit 500 pieces or 200 pieces of a china set, and then they can't possibly use it all. And people don't consider that it's okay to break up the set. You can send some of it away and let someone have those pieces and keep a smaller subset of the china if you want. Sometimes there's really large serving pieces, and some relative collected them and may or may not have used them, and you now inherited this big massive serving piece and you would never use it. Well, then send it on. Let somebody else collect it and use it for their set, and you keep the pieces of the china that are useful to you. People worry about breaking up the sets, and it's like, yeah, there's other people out in the world that have that pattern and may want these pieces that you have. And in the meantime, you don't have to keep everything that you inherit. You can keep a representative sample, and serving for 6 is a representative sample out of a serving set of 12. So good job. Yay. I'm figuring that out.
Leela said, these meetings make me kind of happy that I do not have a garage or basement. Makes it harder for me to hang on to things I don't need because I have no convenient place to store them.
Excellent. Well, so if that's true for you, then in our discussion about how to address it, you might want to put it in a donation bag and put it by the door or wherever you would take it out to go put it in the car, or maybe go put it in the car and you can drive around with it until you feel comfortable donating it. If there's, if you need a time lapse before you give it up, go put it in the car and then, save it for however long until it feels comfortable, let it go.
I also want to share one more comment on the Tittle. Jay said, I made my daughter a very pretty birthday cake. She liked it so much, she left the last piece under saran wrap ever since. It's dry, but perfectly preserved, no mold or anything. Now she's preparing to move. We're wondering if she should pack it as an experiment. Ha ha ha. Out with the old food.
Out with the old. Take a picture.
M suggested putting the dried cake under a glass dome. Just kidding. And
oh, that's funny.
And Jay, let's see, Jay went on to say, it's here. Hold on, I have to scroll a little to find it again. It's become a family joke now. Attachment to something that should have disintegrated by now. Definitely need to use Clutter Fairy Houston criteria on this one.
Right.
One will never use it. Yeah, that is never going to.
Ain't nobody eating that cake.
You don't want to go anywhere near that antique cake.
Right. That's so funny.
Naomi said, wasn't there a Seinfeld episode with a historic
yes!
piece? I remember that. It was from a royal wedding or something. I forget.
Yeah, and it was like 100 years old, and then Elaine ate it. Elaine ate it. Yes.
Oops! Spoiler alert.
Yeah. That was a total hilariousness. Yes.
Okay.
It was something he paid a lot of money for, and it was that was part of the joke.
Yes. Okay, let's go on to
this topic. Came to us from Bonnie, who wrote, In the UK, a very tiny guest bath is a feature in many houses or flats. Any good ideas on the design of such a space? Sometimes it's really tiny. So let's talk about the survey results on this one. We started by asking how many of our audience members have one or more tiny bathrooms in their homes. And we define tiny as meaning less than 40 square feet or 3.7 square meters. 71% of our audience live in home that have a tiny bathroom. So everybody has a lot of us, most of us have a little half bath somewhere in the house.
And that figure may be a little bit low because one viewer mentioned that they market flats, apartments a little bit differently in the UK. They in the United States, everything's always about square footage.
Right.
And there they have, I don't remember the specific terminology, but they'll, say it's they'll give a definition that is known to everybody to mean it's got a bathroom and it's got a kitchen and a single bedroom.
Mm.
And so not everybody will necessarily know what their square footage is.
Right.
But
okay. But 71% is basically 3/4 of our audience. So clearly everybody can relate to this. We also asked what obstacles stand in the way of making your tiny bathroom fully able to serve the functions for which a bathroom is intended. And some of the answers that we got frequently were the obstacles are limited counter space, small fixtures, few or small drawers, very little storage space, bad designs, weird configurations, awkward corners. Tiny bathrooms often feel like architectural afterthoughts. Limited or no electrical outlets, inadequate ventilation and poor drying, and no place to hang towels. So these are clearly the downsides of little tiny bathrooms. And a tiny bathroom is really an activity zone only. It's really only a place that is for active use. Unlike larger bathrooms that have storage space for an inventory of personal or cleaning products and wall space where you can display decor, a tiny bathroom can only hold the most basic and necessary supply. So don't expect to store much of anything in that room. Keeping only the smallest amount of needed supplies on the sink in containers, or if it's a pedestal sink, in containers on small shelves on the wall. No extras in this bathroom, basically. Keep any supplies for the bathroom because you are trying to supply the bathroom regularly, like cleaners, extra toilet paper, the next round of hand soap. You want to keep that stuff in the next nearest closet that's on the same floor as the bathroom. And you can use a cart to store those supplies in the closet if that helps. It makes it easier to manage, but save the volume of backstock for somewhere else, not in the bathroom. Just the bare minimum here, what you're using now and will use in the immediate future. And that's the most you can try to accommodate in the bathroom. And decor needs to be on the walls, basically only. Usually the sink is the only flat surface and it will be easily junked up if you start trying to decorate on the surface. So save the fancy decor for somewhere else, hang some stuff on the walls and call it done. That's the best thing to do with those little closets, just to recognize you can't treat it like another bathroom in the house that has storage and capacity to hold goods. You just want the little bit that you need to be able to make that bathroom effective. It's funny because often when I go into clients' houses, the guest bath is the cleanest, least junked place in the whole house. And I'm standing in this house and I'm digging out with my shovel, I'm digging my way through somebody's space, and I ask to go to the restroom and they point me to the guest bath, and I go in there and close the door and it's like pristine and empty. It's like, yeah, you're not fooling nobody. I've already seen the rest of the house. But it's very, it's very nice to go and sit in the nice, clean guest bath and have a moment of, take a mental break from the work by being in there in the clean bathroom. It's good that you treat it that way, because then you have a little space of reprieve, I guess, from the overwhelm.
Paula said, I'm fortunate my bathroom, about 60 square feet, has a lot of clever built-in storage. I don't even use it all. Paul is just going to rub our noses in it.
Thanks, Paula.
Um,
That must be the master bath, I'm guessing.
Naomi says, I have a 2-room bathroom, a cramped room with just tub and toilet, and a large powder room with built-in shelves and cupboards and large mirror and room for additional chest of drawers. M says, I have to keep a litter pan in the bathroom and it is a small one.
Yeah.
What's the smallest bathroom you've ever lived with, Gail?
So in my college days, I lived in an efficiency apartment, and I had it was sort of there was a room for the tub, and then to the side of it was a countertop that had a sink in it, but it wasn't really a separate room. It was just outside the tub and the toilet.
Yeah.
And that was sort of it. And yeah, it was basically sort of the sink part was kind of in the middle of the bedroom. There was no hiding it, actually. That's probably the smallest I've had. Yeah.
I had one in my dorm room. I use the term loosely, in Italy. I spent a semester in Italy.
Oh yeah.
And the bathroom was about the size of a phone booth. I'm not kidding about this at all. You could sit on the toilet, take a shower, and brush your teeth in the sink, all without having to stretch. It was that really seriously that small.
Yeah,
I mean, the shower head was actually above like the front edge of the toilet.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Well, there you go. It's dorm living, baby.
Yeah.
Hey, Michelle has her hand up.
Yeah, go ahead, Michelle. Let me go ahead and unmute yourself, Michelle.
Yeah, I was going to say, in the UK, tiny bathrooms are a thing. I've got 3 that you can barely turn around without touching the walls.
Right.
And this is supposed to be an executive development.
Luxury living.
Yeah.
Luxury living, tiny bathrooms.
The only way forward is to be ruthless. I've got some pretty things in the guest bathroom that should really be binned. They were gifts from work friends that I never used. They're just there for show. They just need to go.
Right.
But when you get the 30-minute call for somebody arriving, that's the thing I do. Is I clean all the bathrooms.
So they have someplace to go. There you go. Because somebody's going to use the bathroom while they're at your house. Like, that's just the rule.
Yeah.
They're going to have to use the bathroom when they get there.
Yeah. It never fails.
It never fails.
Even if they're stopping in for 5 minutes, that's their first stop. This is one of the places where I think we have the biggest divide between our European audience and our American audience, because in the American suburbs developed when real estate was cheap.
Yeah.
We have big houses and vast bathrooms. And Naomi says, actually saw this in some modern hotels in Germany. The shower stall was the entire bathroom. And Leela said, I saw a video recently for organizing bathroom drawers and cabinets and realized I have never my entire life had a bathroom with a drawer.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's the situation we find ourselves in right now. We have ours was built with no drawers. It has a little the sink is in a little vanity thing, so there's some space underneath, but no drawers.
Yeah.
And they compensated by putting 2 cabinets up on the wall, one over the sink and one over the toilet. We live in a place with 2 pretty small bathrooms. One of them, well, you've seen it. One of them. Yeah,
that one in the kitchen is a micro bathroom.
That's truly a micro bathroom. There's barely room in there to change your
barely
mind.
to sit down. That's what I'm saying. Like, it is a tiny bathroom. I mean, I appreciate that they made the effort, but it is little bitty. Yeah, it's like, y'all, you're so tall. At least you can use the cabinets on the wall.
Yes. Yeah.
Bathrooms, we want bathrooms to be store more, but they don't always come with
we
extra
also
storage.
Use the spaces on the tops of the cabinets.
Yes, you do, which I cannot reach. But
I can do that. Yeah.
He's always stored food way up at the top, or big jars or serving pieces or whatever, and like he's reaching way over his 6-foot forehead to pick stuff up off the kitchen cabinets. I'm like, yeah, that's an Ed thing. That's not an average person thing. That's a tall people solution.
Okay,
But
I
then
think
you find it harder to get down and, get in the lower cabinets because you have to
right,
bend so far over, right? So it's a
right.
trade-off.
Yeah, I tend to only keep lighter, lighter and less used things down very low
Right. Because
because
it's so hard to get to.
I'd rather reach up a little above my head than down below my knees.
Right. Exactly.
Let's get on
Thanks,
to our
Michelle.
third topic. We'll run just a little bit over since we got a late start, so I think we're still okay for time
Okay.
when you're ready to talk again.
All right. So the last thing we're going to talk about today is why do we procrastinate? And thanks to Evelina for the suggestion that we take on the topic of how to beat procrastination. Before we try to answer the question, why do we procrastinate? Why don't you tell us what this background image is about? This background image right here.
Yeah, this is a little more obscure than some of our metaphors. But today's theme image was inspired by a poem that my mother always used to quote when she'd found something more fun or interesting to do than whatever was on her to-do list on that day, or when one of us did the same. She'd say, "A brown bird sang in the apple tree." Eventually, I learned that that line comes from a poem by Richard Le Gallienne, an English romantic poet. Here's the whole poem. It's called "I Meant to Do My Work Today." I meant to do my work today, but a brown bird sang in the apple tree, and a butterfly flitted across the field, and all the leaves were calling me. And the wind went sighing over the land, tossing the grasses to and fro, and a rainbow held out its shining hand. So what could I do but laugh and go? Although the poet may not have been talking explicitly about procrastination, the line about the brown bird singing in the apple tree has always been code for me for I found something else that sounded like more fun than the stuff I was supposed to be doing. So I thought it made a suitable metaphor for this topic.
And it does. It's a perfect metaphor for this topic. So what exactly is going on when we procrastinate? And we found a helpful 2019 New York Times article that reported on recent findings of psychological research into procrastination. And we're going to put a link to the article in the show notes, but let me share a few key takeaways. Dr. Fuchsia Sirois, say it again for it.
Sirois, I think is probably how it's
Sirois,
pronounced.
thank you. My apologies for butchering your name, Doctor. She is a professor of psychology at the University of Sheffield, and she says that procrastination is essentially irrational. We know that it's going to have negative consequences. We finish our work late, or maybe not at all, but we do it anyway. But she says people engage in the irrational cycle of chronic procrastination because of an inability to manage negative moods around a task. So procrastination isn't a character flaw or an inability to manage time, but rather a way of coping with negative emotions and moods that certain tasks produce in us, like being bored, anxiety, resentment, self-doubt, that kind of stuff. In other words, we look at the task and we feel something negative, fear that we're not going to be able to do it or to do it well, or anxiety about how much time it's going to take, or maybe low self-esteem associated with any procrastination we've already done. So we wander off to find something more interesting and fun to do. And what happens then? Well, we feel better. We're rewarded for our procrastination with that momentary hit of relief, which only reinforces our tendency to procrastinate. The avoidance itself can create a feedback loop that makes us prone to do it even more. But we only get a momentary reprieve from the negative emotions because the task that we're avoiding doesn't go away, surprisingly. We just stop thinking about it for a minute. The negative emotions come flooding back, and sometimes even while we're doing the avoidance activity, and they can come back even stronger. Chronic procrastination doesn't just diminish our present productivity, but it can also have destructive effects on our mental and physical health. So what do we do to break the cycle? We can start by finding a better psychological reward for ourselves than the feeling that our avoidance activity offers us. One option is self-forgiveness. A 2010 study showed that students who forgive themselves for procrastinating while studying for the first exam end up procrastinating less when studying for their next exam. Another suggestion is to practice self-compassion. This means recognizing that we went off the tracks by procrastinating, but reacting with kindness and understanding instead of self-criticism and self-deprecation. And how that self-compassion helps create personal growth and stronger motivation. You might also shift your focus to the positive aspects of the task that you're avoiding by procrastinating. What's going to be different or better in your space or your work or your life when you finish this chore? How will you feel when it's done? Visualize a good outcome, and you can try journaling about it. The thing that always comes to mind when I'm thinking about what's going to be different is I'm not going to be annoyed by this task anymore. For me, it's that I really want to not be feeling irritated or upset or judgmental about myself about not doing something. And so negating that negative feeling is my positive result of avoiding of getting the task done instead of avoiding it. Pay attention to the feelings that come when you're feeling ready to procrastinate. What are they like? What do they remind you of? Recognizing and naming those emotions you're feeling may give you more power to manage them. If you just stop and think, what am I feeling right now? Try getting into action, even if it's only the smallest possible way. Give yourself permission to do one tiny first step of the project or the task that you're currently procrastinating. And you might find, as we've discussed here before, that motivation flows out of even just a little bit of action, just a little bit of stepping over your fear or your anxiety or your stress about getting started. One little thing will make a big difference. And there are more suggestions in the article, but that's all we're going to have time for today. We're going to share a link in the show notes, and we encourage you to give it a read so that you can see whether you might gain power over your procrastinating problem. It's worth the effort because we all know that procrastination captures our attention. Everybody struggles with it at some point in their life over something in their life. And so it can only be helpful if you do a little work on it.
Yeah, it can be such a destructive feedback loop of, burned up time and negative feeling. Connie says, I find that I procrastinate about some file sorting because those tasks remind me of all the things I had planned to do and didn't, or forgot to do or follow up on.
And see, that is a perfect place to use self-compassion, right? Like it's water under the bridge. You didn't get that done. You didn't follow up, whatever. And you moved on to other things that were more important. You were managing things that were more important. I see this a lot as well when clients are having major issues in their life, like they're taking care of a parent who's sick, or they're having their own mental health challenges or medical issues, the spouse, themselves, their kids, and they're having to manage a situation that's happening in their life. And then they get mad at themselves for not doing all the other things they would be doing if this situation wasn't happening. It's like, you got enough on your plate. You don't need to also be mad at yourself about not being able to wedge it all into one 24-hour period. You got to give yourself some space for, there's only so much time in the day and there's only so much I can do. And right now, my priority is my sick spouse, my sick self, my sick kid. And so as you go about your filing and you're finding those things like, oh, I should have, stop telling yourself that and say, it just wasn't a priority in the moment. It hasn't been a priority. And I've got other priorities right now instead. And we're going to let that one roll under the bridge. The water's going to carry it away. And I'm not going to worry about it anymore because I have a new set of things to worry about today. And don't give yourself a hard time about it. And as you hear yourself complaining or being upset, this is what I have right now. This is what I'm doing right now. I don't need to be beating myself up on the back end for something that's already done.
Eclair said, I procrastinate due to perfectionism.
Mm.
And that actually reminds me of another interesting article I read on the topic by a couple of productivity experts. And I'll share a link to that one in the show notes as well. They mentioned four different types of procrastinators, and we don't have time to really dig into that, but perfectionists were one of the types they mentioned.
Right.
And let's see. Linda asked, is clutter a visual representation of procrastination? Didn't finish it, deferred decisions?
I think that's a good way to look at it. It's definitely stuff that you, at the very least, it was a deferred action to put it up. At its most basic, that you procrastinated putting something away. But then it could also be, I am overwhelmed by this decision. I don't know what the perfect solution is. I don't know how I'm going to handle this. And so it can be as small as I'm procrastinating the rest of the steps to put it all the way away to this is so emotionally overwhelming. I don't know how to face it, and all of the space in between.
Naomi mentions fear of being criticized for not doing the task well enough as a driver of procrastination.
And that's one that again, self-compassion, like do your best effort and don't worry about what anybody else thinks that they would do. And if they tell you what they would do, then you can, welcome them to do it. If they have enough of an opinion to tell you how they would have done it better, then you can tell them that you're happy to let them do that. And in the meantime, you do your best effort and be satisfied with what you were able to do and move along.
Well, one of the things they mention in the article is that one of the perfectionist behaviors is to put it off until almost too late.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you can use the short deadline as a rationale for settling for a lower standard of quality than you normally require of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's such an unfortunate thing. If you had started earlier, you could do a job that you really felt pleased with and proud of.
Mm-hmm.
But instead you tortured yourself.
Well, yeah, that like you feel bad while you're doing all the procrastination, and then you do a hurry job at the end and then settle for the end result that isn't what you want. Yeah. And that's definitely a negative result train that feeds itself and makes it worse as you go along. I think for perfectionists, I think it's important to think about it as you can do a project in stages. So you can do it today, and it doesn't have to be the end result that you think is perfect, but it can be, instead of I tried it and I failed to get it perfect, you can say I tried it and did stage 1 or round 1 of this project. And then you can circle back another day and improve it, and circle back another day and improve it again. You can always circle back to your end result and tweak it and make it better and do more around it. But you can't circle and improve until you get started on something and give yourself a starting place. And so instead of think of it as I have to do it completely correct the first time, think that you're just doing round 1 and that you're going to give yourself the bandwidth and the time to do a round 2 or a round 3 improvement to the project and make it better. And, if you think about it, that you're doing round 1 and you're going to live with it and see what needs to be tweaked, how it needs to be improved, where it needs to be improved, then you're gaining valuable experience by living with the partial result so that you can tell what worked and what didn't, what needs to be changed, moved, shifted, rotated, however it needs to be changed. And you're gaining that information by living with it how it is, and then you can go back and make those changes and see how it improves. And so being a perfectionist is always I start it and when I finish, it's perfect. And I suggest that you think of that timeline as a longer timeline. I start it and I finish round 1. And then I come back another day and do round 2 and do round 3 on the way to going from start to perfection, and see if you can't get closer and feel better about it and not feel like you have to procrastinate.
I also think that doing a piece of the project, taking a little sip of the project can help break the feedback loop. It can interrupt the cycle of negative emotion because you get a little taste of sense of accomplishment at, well, now I've done the outline, the outline's in good shape. Well, you feel that little sense of accomplishment, and that creates the motivation that raises your motivation level to keep going. Ginger said, I have that perfectionism procrastination too. The past 2 days, I couldn't vacuum until I emptied the canister, cleaned the brushes and filters. Why? Because I wanted to see how much dirt I collected, like proof of just how dirty my house is. And then I thought the vac probably needs some maintenance. We're laughing with you, Ginger, not at you.
Yes.
And then I thought the vac probably needs some maintenance. So my vacuum sits here mocking me. Who does this? The vacuum is clean now. I'll vacuum today.
Yay, Ginger.
And the answer to who does this is, I think a lot of us.
Everybody
does this.
We don't do it always about the same things, but we definitely do it. It's true. Oh my gosh. Well, good for you that you made it happen. And you don't have to clean the vacuum every time. So now you've cleaned it for the quarter or for this half of the year, and you can go on about your vacuuming without having to worry about the vacuum cleaner anymore. I think we should do the Tittle. Do we
one more quick comment?
Okay.
Bridget said, once I learned from Marie Forleo, I'd rather choose imperfect action than perfect inaction.
Yes, that is 100% true. And that is because perfect inaction is a recipe for feeling bad. And so even imperfect action at least feels like your emotion and making an attempt, and you can feel good about the effort, even if it's not the perfect effort, even if it's not the end result. You've gotten started, and that makes that goes a long way for making you feel better about it. It's true.
Before we get to the Tittle, let me tease next week. We're going to be back at the usual time on Tuesday, February 21st at noon US Central Time. We're going to tackle 2 topics. Since spring is right around the corner for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, seems like a good time to talk about organizing for the return of lawn and garden fun. We're also going to explore downsizing from a couple of different angles, specifically the emotional and logistical challenges that downsizing presents. Join us on February 21st for our next episode. I don't have a snappy title yet.
That's okay.
Look for that in your email tomorrow.
Right. Those were all suggested to us from the audience. You guys have all made those suggestions. So these are direct responses to things that people wanted to cover, and we're going to take it on and talk about downsizing a little bit. I think that's very intimidating for people. And so we have a lot to say about that.
Why don't you give us a Tittle?
Okay. The Tittle this week is called Trial Separation. This week's assignment is to explore letting go of an item with which you're having trouble breaking up. Identify an item in your home that you feel rationally ready to release, but your emotions are holding you back from letting go. Take the object out of its usual display or storage space or position in the house. Take a photograph that you'll use when you want to recall it to memory. Reflect on your feelings about the item, and optionally you can jot down a few words or phrases to describe them. And now place the item somewhere out of sight, in a donation bag or bin, in the garage, in the trunk of the car, somewhere that isn't in your living space, not where it's always been, on its way out the door. Now just live with the absence of the item for a week. Then come prepared next week to tell us whether you've noticed any change in your feelings. The item's away, it hasn't actually left the house 100%, but it's out of its normal space, and you've lived with it being gone for a week, and come and tell us how it felt. If you feel ready to say goodbye, then you can take the next step and dispose of the item by gift or donation or trash recycling. And if you don't feel ready to say goodbye, that's okay. You can give your trial separation more time after the first week. You can try a second week and then come back to the decision again later. Don't put it back in place where it was. Leave it in its, temporary space, and with the goal of being separated from it long enough for you to think your way through and ultimately release it all the way. And come and tell us how it went.
Or feel your way through.
Right, exactly.
As the case may be.
As the case may be.
If you're watching this on YouTube, we would love for you to join us live. To get notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by visiting cfhou.com/Facebook, or subscribe to our mailing list by visiting cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from you, so please keep those questions, comments, and topic suggestions coming on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere that you find us. You can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
Thanks everybody for coming. We really appreciate it. And we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.